Skool, hey! Inside school, learning will begin the year.
All right, so welcome to Inside School. And today we're going deep inside a really interesting discussion that popped up in the Skool community itself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it all revolves around something you've probably seen on a bunch of different platforms, the Leaderboard.
Right.
But what happens when you bring that kind of gamification into a community setting?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, that's what we're diving into today. So
Awesome. Yeah, we've got a ton of really juicy forum threads to unpack here. A bunch of school members were talking about this. And even Sam Ovens, the platform's creator, chimed in. And it all started with a request that really makes you think about how different online communities can be.
That's right.
Inside, we're so glad you're here. Come on inside to Inside School.
So we had Johnny Hickman, who runs a community for people dealing with chronic pain.
Yeah.
And he brought up a really important point. He asked if there was any way to turn off the leaderboard for his group. You know, when you think about what his community is all about, supporting people who are going through constant pain, having something that ranks them or turns their activity into a game just feels wrong.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, from your perspective, and thinking about our listeners too, have you ever seen a feature that's meant for one thing totally backfire when it's used in a different setting?
Oh, absolutely. And this situation just shows how tricky it can be to build online spaces, you know? What might get people excited and involved in one community can be totally insensitive or even hurtful in another. And Skylar Reeves really got that right away. They totally understood where John T. was coming from and was worried about how a leaderboard could come across as insensitive. Imagine communities for people who've been through some really tough stuff, like domestic violence survivors, people recovering from abuse, or even veterans who are amputees.
Right.
In those kinds of groups, a leaderboard wouldn't just be pointless, it can actually be really upsetting. And then William Renner jumped in and suggested a simple fix, an on-off toggle. So what are your thoughts on that initial reaction?
Yeah, on the surface, a toggle seems like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
right? It gives everyone the choice.
Yeah.
But Skylar Reeves also brought up something super important, the tech side of things. It turns out that the leaderboard isn't just like a little add-on. It's actually baked into the whole Skool platform.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's connected to stuff like avatars, profiles, how people post things, and even how they get to course materials. So while they might be able to just hide it, making a true on-off switch that completely separates it from everything else is a much bigger technical challenge.
Yeah, I see.
It makes you realize how complex these online systems really are.
Totally. It's like trying to fix one pipe in your house without messing up the water pressure somewhere else.
Exactly. Even what seem like easy feature requests can have a ton of complicated stuff going on behind the scenes. But the good news is that Sam Ovens himself responded and said they will be putting in an on-off toggle.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, he didn't give a specific timeline, which is typical for tech development. But the fact that he committed to it says a lot about how they're willing to listen to what the community wants.
Right. It shows they're actually paying attention to the people using the platform.
Exactly. And this is where the discussion gets really interesting. Josh Talbot-Bow chimed in, and his view probably reflects how a lot of people see leaderboards at first. He said he actually never come across anyone who was against them. He thought it was just a way to see who's active and participating. What about you? Have you ever felt like a leaderboard just shows how much energy a group has?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty natural way to look at it, you know, that the more active someone is, the more value they're bringing or the more engaged they are. But then over in the German forum, there was this whole other side of the argument.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a thread called Leaderboard Deactivate Soon Possible. And in it, Sanjit Angela brought up a super important point that I think is really worth thinking about. She said whether or not a leaderboard makes sense depends totally on what the group is trying to achieve and if there are any actual rewards tied to it. Like, let's say you have a community that's just about sharing a hobby. Does a ranking system really add anything useful in that case?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If it's really just about connecting with people and sharing something you enjoy, a leaderboard could seem weird.
Right.
It might even make it feel competitive, which could go against the whole community spirit.
Exactly. And Sanja Heiniger went even further with this. She's really concerned about what she calls performance thinking that leaderboards can create. Her argument is that this kind of pressure can actually backfire and make people less likely to participate in the long run. It makes you wonder if we're sometimes pushing people to focus on the wrong things in online communities.
It really does. Are we putting too much emphasis on how many posts and likes people get instead of how well they're connecting and the quality of their interactions?
Right. Sanja Heiniger even talked about a more feminine way of approaching leadership and engagement, where the focus is on emotional intelligence and genuine connection instead of just numbers.
Interesting.
And Oliver Haas agreed with her. He suggested that seeing a leaderboard might make people who aren't as active feel intimidated and less likely to join in. Have you ever felt like you didn't want to participate in a group because it was super obvious who the top contributors were?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It can feel like there's this high bar to entry or that anything you say won't be as good as what others are saying.
Right. And to add to that, Sanja Heiniger shared a story about how some people actually left her community because of this pressure and what she called a bad vibe from people constantly posting to move up the rankings. It shows how a feature that's supposed to be good can actually hurt people's feelings.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And we also heard from Christina Floor and Natalie Nuggebauer. They both talked about how seeing leaderboards made them feel stressed because they didn't have a lot of time to keep up. Christina was busy managing multiple communities, and Natalie was juggling family stuff. It just highlights how personal circumstances can really affect how we see these features.
It does. It really shows all the different ways people experience gamification. Because on the one hand, you have someone like Melanie Dewart who loves the leaderboard. She sees it as a big part of what makes school special and fun. For her, it's something positive that adds to the whole feel of the platform.
Right, so there are people who really enjoy it. And then Calvin Hollywood came in with a really interesting counterpoint. He asked if a leaderboard should automatically make people feel pressured. He compared it to board games, where there are always winners and losers. His point was that a little bit of competition is totally normal and can even be enjoyable for some. But, and this is important, he also totally understood why some people were concerned and agreed that an on-off option would be a good thing. And Elena Giuseppino, who was new to Skool at the time, said she actually found the gamification motivating.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it definitely can have a positive effect for some users.
It can. And Calvin also noticed something interesting. The communities that were using the leaderboard tended to be more active overall. So it seems like in a lot of cases, it does what it's supposed to do. It gets people more involved, even though it doesn't work for everyone. It really makes you think about the choices that have to be made when designing a platform. How do you find a balance between what works for most people and what works for everyone?
It's a tough question. And it brings us to the question of what a leaderboard is actually supposed to do and what kind of impact it has.
Right.
Nina Edith Finch had an idea that seemed small but could make a big difference. She suggested changing the name from Leaderboard to Activities Board.
I like that.
Yeah, she thought that might lessen the feeling of pressure that comes with the word leaderboard. What do you think about how the words we use can affect how we see these online features?
Oh, I think it's huge. The word leaderboard instantly makes you think of ranking and competition, but activities board is more neutral. It just shows who's participating.
That's true. And Kevin Uterman brought up another angle. He saw the leaderboard as a way for the community owner to show appreciation for the people who are actively contributing. It's about recognizing and valuing their input.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And Martina Stix had a more practical view from a community management perspective. She argued that the leaderboard can be useful for building the community and also for spotting members who aren't participating at all, the ones with no input, no output. So it raises the question of how community leaders can get a sense of how healthy and engaged their community is and whether a leaderboard helps with that.
Right. But through all these different opinions, there was one thing that kept coming up, the need for flexibility.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Christian Barho pointed out that what motivates one person might completely turn another person off. So individual personality and preferences really matter. And Christian Mulder took this idea even further. She suggested using the leaderboard strategically, like maybe turning it on at the beginning when you're trying to get the community going, and then switching it off once things are established and you want to encourage deeper connections. So what do you think about that kind of adaptable approach?
I think it's brilliant. It treats the leaderboard as a tool that you use for a specific purpose instead of just a permanent thing. And Winfried Hurst was totally on board with the idea that the decision should be up to the person who created the community. That way, they can tailor the platform to fit their specific community culture and goals. When Peter Summerer asked what the point of having an on-off switch was, Nita Edith Finch explained that it gives individual members the power to choose how visible they want to be and how much they want to engage with that feature.
I see.
Michael Grindling summed up all these different viewpoints really well. He recognized that gamification can be fun, but also acknowledged the potential for pressure. In the end, he emphasized the importance of giving the community owner the flexibility to decide. And Falk-Fried even suggested taking it a step further by letting owners adjust the number of ranking levels and what it takes to reach each one.
That's interesting. So it's all about customization, and it all goes back to Sanja Heiniger's bigger question, which really makes you think about things beyond just this one feature.
Yeah, what was that?
Well, she questioned whether all this focus on performance thinking is really necessary or even good in our digital world.
That's deep.
It is. She wishes that online interactions were more about truly connecting with others, having a shared purpose, and making a real difference, instead of just focusing on numbers and trying to climb some virtual ladder. So it makes you think, what are the most important things we want to encourage in our online communities?
It really does make you look beyond the typical ways we think about engagement. It forces us to face the basic question of what motivates us. What really gets people to participate and contribute to online communities? Is it the excitement of competition, the need to be recognized, a strong sense of belonging, a shared goal? Or is it some combination of all of these things? Ruth Wickie's question, is it still gamification if the leaderboard is removed, really gets to the heart of this dilemma.
It does.
It challenges us to think about what engagement really means and whether we sometimes depend too much on external rewards to get people involved.
So as we wrap up this look at the Skool community's discussion about leaderboards, I think the key takeaway for our listeners is this. There's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to creating successful online spaces, especially when it comes to features like leaderboards. What we saw in this conversation was a huge range of opinions and experiences, which just goes to show how important it is to really think about the specific context of your community, how sensitive your members are, and how even features that are meant to be positive can have unexpected negative consequences.
And on a personal level, I think it's worth reflecting on your own experiences in online communities. Have you ever felt drawn to a leaderboard? Have you ever felt pressured to constantly contribute? What kinds of online environments do you find the most engaging and fulfilling?
This whole discussion really pushes us to rethink the standard ideas about online engagement. As online communities continue to change, how can we as creators and members design these spaces in a way that truly values genuine connection, shared purpose, and a feeling of belonging? How can we move beyond gamification that might divide people or create pressure? What new and creative ways can we find to encourage meaningful interaction and a true sense of community? It's definitely something to keep thinking about long after this discussion is over.
Absolutely. So that's it for this episode of Inside Skool. Thanks for joining us as we took a deep dive into the heart of this fascinating debate. And until next time, keep those conversations going and keep building those incredible online communities.
See you next time.
See ya.